Hello.
Afternoon. So we've got 4 properties to show you today in one way or another. So a little bit protracted today's video because the first property, which is property number 4, we saw after property number 3, which was Lobatera, and it was an add-on, and the agent was in a rush for his din-dins and said we could come back and look at it properly at a later date.
It was already late. I think it was after 7. And he said, "Oh, it's just down the road. I'll just show you real quick." So we jumped out. We didn't even walk the whole property. We just had a brief look around a small part of it, didn't we?
So enjoy tonight's episode, and we do have 3 nice properties to show you, and a little bit less filming than the previous ones as well. So the first 2 we were with Melanie from Home Key, and she was lovely, but because she was showing us around and talking, it felt inappropriate to be filming all the time, so we sort of filmed at the end and
We've
did
got
a
a few little bits and bobs
clips,
to show
bits
you.
and pieces. And then the last one, Rosemary land, we looked at with Louis again, who showed us property number 4 and property number 3. And
so you got more of us waffling with each of the properties than you usually would to make up for the lack of video.
yeah, so enjoy tonight's episode and let us know what you think of the properties in the comments. And thanks for watching.
We are Those Weirdos, a family of 7.
We've been living, working and travelling for 2 years in our self-converted Sprinter van.
I have a chameleon.
We're driving to Portugal to find a bit of off-grid land to buy, then we're going to apply for residency and avoid the Schengen restrictions caused by Brexit.
We'll be filming every bit of the process so you can come along with us and be part of our journey.
Property number 4. We don't have any footage at all of this because we were viewing property number 3 and it was already quite late at night, and the estate agent Louise said, "If you want, I can just take you down the road a little way and show you this other property. I think you really like it." So we said okay, and we all bundled in the van, and it was getting later and it was getting kind of dark, wasn't it? We were all starving hungry, and he said, "I'll just give you a quick..." So we literally just jumped out the van and did a very small circle of a bit of the property. So we didn't grab the camera.
We did not grab the camera.
Sorry about that.
So to give you a little sort of visualisation of the property, it was 2.4 hectares, which is massive, very big, of which a third of it was reasonably flat, clear land, and 2/3 of it was pine forest. And the flattish land had a nice well. It had a shipping container, which was just a bare container.
Had lots of fruit trees, lots and lots of orange trees with the oranges actually hanging on them, so that was very exciting. Rosie liked that.
Yeah.
It would be really good for growing things on. The earth there is really nice, the well is huge, full of water, really easy to get the water out and just irrigate straight away right where you're going to grow.
And it was in the same valley as property number 3, Lobatera, but this one was at the top of the valley, so hence why it was flatter. So it still had a few of the boulders that Lobatera had, but the downsides really was it was quite exposed. It was a short little track off the little B road, and then on the right hand side there was a goat farm, which had its farm building right on the track. Yeah, it was literally our land would stop. Then there's the little farm track that lots of people would use to go not only to the farm but to go to other farms further down, so that constant traffic right next to your piece of land, and then goat farm. So we kind of discounted it already, haven't we? Yeah, because of the track. And there was nothing wrong with it per se. It was very nice. It'd be fab for growing on. Yeah, and it would have been little work to start growing and living on. You know, maybe increased fire risk having so much pine woodland, which you'd have to manage and also eventually cut down. That might have been handy for building things. So yeah, I think overall it was kind of nice, but it you didn't go, wow, this is amazing. It was just cool. And we didn't even do our top 10. We haven't scored it because A, you've got no video, and B, we just went, we don't want to be that close to a road, so it was kind of discounted there and then. So that was number 4. And we're now on our way to a little town church, about 30 minutes more drive. where we're meeting up with Monique from Portugal, I think that is the right site. But I'll put a link to it below this so that you can see where it is. And she's a small estate agent in Holland, and she's got a few properties. So there's 2 sort of off-grid properties that she has that suit our needs potentially. So we'll have to look at those with her. So we'll film that and show you around. So yeah, we're really enjoying looking at properties, all sorts of different shapes and sizes, from not suitable to us, but there's just such a lot of land available here. So if you are coming over to look for land or a cheap house, or even a not so cheap house, there's every shape and size available. So another roasting day. It's currently nearly 30 degrees. There is a bit of a breeze, but it's ever so hot today. So we're currently still in the centre of Portugal, probably about an hour from Castelo Branco, which is the sort of general area that we're looking at land. So we'll see you in a minute and we'll show you around these next 2 properties.
Property number 5 is Quinta Feiteira. It is €21,000 and it's 6,040 metres squared. It has a registered schist building of 48 metres squared on it.
So this is the first one that we went to see with Melanie from Home Key, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, so we spent a few hours with Melanie, met her by a church in a nice little village, and we drove off into the hills of a different part of the Castelo Branco municipality.
It was quite a long drive, and it was just through reams and reams and reams of pine forest.
Yeah.
So it was one tiny little road, not a single track. But it was a small road.
Yeah,
and
tarmacked.
yeah, pine forest as far as the eye could see in every direction.
Yeah.
And then you got to there was a little turn off, and then it was like a dirt sort of stone track, and almost as soon as you turned onto that, you pulled in next to the schist building, which was at the top of this property.
Yeah, that's not true, is it? So that was it was quite a nice property. It was a small rural farm building which had been animal sties, so it was split into 2 halves.
Yep.
And Melanie sadly only had a key for 1 half, but it meant we could get in, and there was a little wall dividing the 2 halves, so I did climb up and have a look through. And it was, you know, it was a serviceable building. Would have been all right for a tiny house with a lot of work, or for a storeroom.
Yeah, it was in pretty good nick. The roof was there. It was a little bit rickety, might have needed a bit of patching up, but it maybe wouldn't have needed a whole new one. The plaster on the outside of the walls was peeling off a little bit, and we said that we would just pull all of that off and then repoint it. The inside wasn't too bad either. I don't think it would have taken much work to make it livable if you could get it re-registered.
No, it had a bit of character on the inside, where it had, you know, the troughs for the animals and the metal rings on the wall to tie your animals to, that kind of thing. So the roof was in reasonable condition, although some of the beams had a few cracks in them. I think the downside of the property, although it wasn't a massive downside, is just on the border of the property there were big pylons.
Yes.
Electricity pylons. So although we couldn't hear any humming from the electricity, it was very close to the land.
Which was a bit off-putting.
Yeah.
Also, as you were just driving down the track getting ready to turn into the building, there was a, what do they call it, water mine?
A water mine.
Water mine. We couldn't see any water in it because it was full of undergrowth, but we were told that there's supposed to be water in there.
Yeah, that was huge.
And so you've turned onto where the building is. If you carry on further, you could probably drive a van down. You could certainly turn it into a decent driveway to drive your van down.
Yep.
And then you're on the property proper, as it were, which was a rectangular field, basically. It was in very good nick. It had really nice earth. Loads and loads of fruit trees. It had orange trees and pears and quince and grapes and all sorts. And I think that would have been really good for watering on. For watering on? I think that would have been really good for growing on. It had a well,
It had a nice well, yeah.
And a little stream?
And a little stream running on 1.5 sides of the property. There was a little bit of water in there. There was also a wet area that looked like it was sort of a small pond in the winter when the water levels were higher. And again, there was nothing wrong with it. It was very nice, but it wasn't exciting, was it? It was very flat.
Wasn't very
very big.
It would have been fine if you didn't really want to put your own stamp on it, I think. There wasn't a great deal you could do with it. You could maybe put up another small tiny shed in one part of the field. You could certainly just do growing of vegetables and so on there. It would be fine for that. But I don't know.
I thought it was very expensive for the size of
Yes,
land.
there is that. Oh, that's the other thing. If, before you turned off to the building, if you carried on down the track that then went to other properties much further down that we didn't even see, that track is part of the property, which means that although you can't do anything with it, you can't fence it off, you can't turn it into more growing space because other people need to use it, it's still part of your property. So you're paying for that land and then you can't do anything with it. So that was a bit
So yeah, in Portugal, if you own a road or a track and that track is accessed, then you have to grant access to any other farmers, off-grid people, whatever it might be, that need to use that track. Didn't look like it was used very much, and all the properties around, apart from the one immediately next door, were empty. So the guy next door that was on the boundary, it was similar to this property, and they didn't live there, but it was clearly well managed, so it would mean that we would have a direct neighbour if we were there. So whilst that wasn't a major issue, that is one of the things we didn't really want, direct neighbours, so that got us a little points down.
So land on the other side of the fence here, big jungle, possibly water, that would need clearing out, grapes along the fence, olives, quince, apples, figs, orange, loads of room. Spanish reed on the other side of this bank that you can see at the edge. There's a ditch and it still has some water running through it, which is why the grass is actually quite so green, and there's reeds. You can just about see the bottom of this. There's water down there and there's wild mint growing. Mad. Figs. Well, orange. Rosie. Land. Way off in the distance, you can see Castelo Branco. Well, with mechanism and water. The dog grows. This is the top end. And there's the little building. You could definitely drive up this. Definitely drive up this.
It's hot. Building's cute. Did you want to film inside?
Nah, it's alright. Very cute. And this road goes down the hill to other farms. Doesn't look very used. Most of the farms are derelict now anyway. And then there's quite a nice large parking space if you didn't want to drive down the hill.
Go on to your top 10.
Yep, we'll do the top 10 for Quinta Feiteira. Number 1, water. It had water, it had a lovely well, and it had a little stream as well, and possibly a water mine as well. Number 2, was it arable land? Yes, it was. There were already lots of fruits and things growing there, and the soil looked really, really good. Number 3, was it over 5,000 metres squared? Just. It was 6,040 metres squared, which when we looked at it actually looked really quite a bit small. Number 4, access. Was there good access? Yes, there was. tarmac road, a little bit of track, straight onto your property, and a place to park without having to do anything at all. So that was really good. Number 5, 4G. Was there 4G signal there?
We actually forgot to check, but I spoke to Melanie and she said there was reasonable 4G, not necessarily 4 bars or full signal, but she said there was 4G, but we didn't check.
We didn't check. Well, it was a bit, when you're walking around with an estate agent, I think we said this in our intro, but when you're walking around with an estate agent, it feels a little bit rushed, and you're listening to what they have to say, and you're maybe not able to do as much filming and testing and stuff like that as you would like to do. Number 6, a varied landscape. Did it have a varied landscape?
Not really.
It did not. It was a field and a track and some brambles.
Yep.
Yeah. Number 7, did it have fruit and olive trees?
It did.
It did. It had loads and loads of fruit trees and olive trees and all sorts of other exciting things. Number 8, a ruin. It did not have a ruin. It had a little farm building. I'm not sure if that's better or worse than a ruin that you could do up. It had a building. Number 9, neighbours. It had no houses as neighbours, so nobody, living right next door, but definitely neighbours that would come and tend their land, who could see everything that you're doing on your land, so not too much in the way of privacy. And number 10, fire risk. The land itself was nice and clear, but it was completely surrounded on all sides by pine forest, so that's quite a high fire risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not ideal.
So what were our scores on the doors?
Scores. Rosie gave it a 7 out of 10. She absolutely loved the fruit trees. That was very exciting for her. That's my foot.
Sorry.
I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well. I said that it would be nice for growing, but it was a bit on the small side. And you gave it a 7 as well.
So that's 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10?
Yeah.
And not for us.
So not for us.
Number 6, the old mill house. This one is 15,000 euros. It's 7,400 meters squared, and it has a registered old mill measuring 16 meters squared. Now, Dom's going to tell you all about this one because of the access. At the moment, the van wasn't even able to get there, so Rosie and I stayed in the van, and Dom went and filmed.
So Melanie took me in her 4-wheel drive, as although there was reasonable access, there was a tree down, so we couldn't get the van round. And again, like the last property and one of the earlier properties, this one was split in half, so the track ran through the land, and on one side of the land, as you'll see from the footage, there was a triangle that had been cleared out of the pine forest and was on a slope, and then on the other side of the track there was basically a football pitch sized square piece of land with nothing on it at all. No olives, no trees, no shade, no fruit trees. And the mill, it was quite pleasant, it was nice. I like old buildings, so it was a bit of historical, so that was quite nice. But
did it have all the stuff in it still?
it had all the stuff in, so it was literally like the person that did the milling had left and all their stuff was there. So the big millstone was there. Excuse me.
Sounds pretty cool.
So the big millstone was there, and you could see down the centre of the millstone, and the workings to make the stone turn was underneath in a separate room which you couldn't get to. I was quite excited by that because I thought, well, if we bought it, we could clear
Do
in
stuff
there.
with it, yeah.
So it was actually 2 stories, with the second story being basically underground as a basement, and the stream would flow through that. And then there was a sideways on mill, which was quite interesting. I don't know what you call it, the wheel.
Yeah?
Yeah, so
Water
instead
wheel.
of it being upright like you'd see in the UK, it was on its side, and then the stream ran, made it turn, which turned the stone. So that was quite interesting, but apart from that,
No scope for turning it into a tiny home or anything,
wasn't-
really?
No, it wasn't an exciting piece of land. There was no shade, no real anything really.
No.
So it was a no from me, although it was quite an interesting walk around the mill.
It was worth a look, I think.
Yeah, always worth a look, because you never know when you're going to find a piece of land that suddenly your heart
Captures
goes,
you.
wow, this is the one.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's the mill over there. It's bigger than it looked on your film. So the boundary is these bushes, and then over the road, which is just there, up in that triangle behind Melanie's car. And if I remember rightly, the boundary is the stream under the mill. Is that right?
Yes, on this side, on the left side, this is the boundary until that stone over there. So I'll show you.
Yeah.
Behind that little wall, let's say it's neighbors, but on the right side it's until the stream. Yeah? So the border goes from up there. Here. Okay. So this neighbor from here, it goes into the stream,
Yeah.
and then the stream comes from there to over there. Still a little farther for the stream.
Yeah.
So we take 2 steps back and December and nice and cool.
Oh, that is nice, isn't it?
And through here you can see the system actually. So the water would be let under the building, and it will make these go and make the stone move. There's actually an opening down there.
Can you go in?
Well, brambles, but
Yeah.
you could just clear there out. So you can take there. Yes.
It's quite a cute little building, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's 2.5 meters square, maybe. The old millstone. A few old pots. Nearly killed myself. Oh, it is a lot cooler in there. And lots of brambles, but there is a door, I think. So did you say the border continues over there on this side?
It's until the stream.
Yeah. So the stream is where? Here?
It's here.
Oh,
but
there.
It goes a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It goes like that.
No way I'm going in there with those brambles, but yeah, there's definitely like another layer under there. So I presume they channeled the water from the stream down here.
Yeah, from there. They
Yeah.
channel it from there to
Yeah.
come down. Yes. And then it makes a corner over there. And then it goes up. You see that small plastic
Tie, yeah.
so it goes there straight down and then up. There's a wall actually.
Rabbits.
And there's a corner over here.
Yeah.
And that's
So that's the boundary, and that's the stream, which is dry, but looks like it's very wet in the winter.
yes, there are some spots there's still water. It's not running anymore.
Like little pools.
Yes,
Yeah, I can see one down there, yeah. And it's obviously quite moist because there's quite a few soft plants that are very green. So the land at the bottom by the mill is quite flat, and then there's a kind of terrace made of slate and another boar path with what looks like old steps, and then there's a nice dry wall. That's the mill down the bottom. And then all this land up to where it's been cleared. So all that is included. And then the triangle the other side of the pines up until the big chunk of pines up here. A lot of brambles to step over. You've got a lot of these reeds, which means that there's water not too far down there as well. So it's probably not as dry as it looks, and probably quite wet in the winter. Soil looks good. No fruit trees, no olives. The little borehole stroke well. I think possibly that might even be a blocked up well as well, maybe. It's all the way to the bushes, and again the top part to those bushes there. And then it does have quite a good road. Well, the road is a bit generous, quite a good track, but there's no turning point. So you could maybe do that here, possibly. Let's just have a look down this bit. So that's a pan of the top, again to the tree line, and then that's the road. So you could probably make a turning circle here. There is a drop, so it wouldn't be easy. Have to move a load of stuff, but it's pretty cool.
Number one. Did it have water?
It did. It had a borehole, and you could see the water in it, and possibly a well that was blocked.
Number two. Was it arable land?
I think it was arable land, but it was hadn't been farmed for a long time, so it was just scrub and grass, probably arable.
Number three. Over 5,000 metres squared. It was 7,400 metres squared, so it was a decent size.
Yeah.
Number four. Access. What was the access like if that tree hadn't been down?
It was okay. And it would have been fine, it was flat, however there was no actual parking for a van or a number of vans.
1 minute. Windy. Easy. Where'd that come from? Watching us making our video. He was just standing there watching us like, what are they doing? Are they famous? Yes, we're famous YouTubers, excuse us.
Right, we are on the YouTube.
We are on the YouTube.
I live with my wife.
We're very famous.
I have not got my keys. Where are my wank keys?
Right, number five, 4G signal. What was the 4G like there?
Poor.
Oh,
It was there, but it
rubbish
wasn't.
then, isn't it?
Don't think
Zero.
It was. Yeah, next.
Number six, did it have a varied landscape?
No.
No, it
No.
was flat.
It was flatty.
Number seven, fruit and olive trees. We've told you already, there were none.
Nothing.
Number eight, did it have a ruin? Yes, it did. It had a little mill.
It did.
So that's kind of exciting, but not, we were thinking ruin as in tiny home, you know.
Yeah.
Number nine, neighbours. Did it have any neighbours?
No, I don't think so.
No neighbours, nothing. And number 10, fire risk. Surrounded by pines again?
Yeah, surrounded by pines, and although the triangle at the top of the land had been cleared, it was completely surrounded by quite a dense but young pine forest. And all around on the drive, pine trees for miles.
Okay.
So,
But I think we've discounted it on multiple of the other things
Yeah.
anyway, so sorry old mill, you're not for us. Number 7, Rosemary Land. This was on the market when we went to visit it at 21,500 euros, but is right now at 17,500. It is 11,000 meters squared, so it's a big piece of land.
It's a big one.
Yes. Again, we didn't film as much of this as we would have liked, partly because we were there with Luis, who walks very fast, as we told you before, whooshes around, shows you everything. Also because our battery died, because we're really rubbish at YouTubing. So we grabbed the camera and we were like, yeah, we're going to film everything, and then after a couple of clips the battery ran out and the van was too far away to go back and get it, so we're really
farewell there,
sorry.
did we? No.
Sorry, we keep getting it wrong. So we're going to tell you all about this one too. This one is quite exciting, not only for the size of it, but it had lots of lovely fruit trees.
It did.
It had big fat figs and pear trees that were covered in actual proper pears, surprisingly enough.
No apples on the
Pears
pear
on a
tree.
pear tree, wow.
Yeah.
It had quite a few buildings, had a couple of wells, both of them full of water. It was a good one, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And it was quite rural, quite remote.
So it was about a 5-minute drive down a track. There were 2 axes, so you could come in from the left or the right of the same track. Downside was there was nowhere to turn on said track, and there was no parking on the land. And of the buildings that Missy mentioned, the first one was an old house, which we found out from a plaque on the side had been built in 1970, I think. So not a very old house, but it had obviously been empty, stroke derelict for some time.
Yep.
Had some big cracks in the walls, and
The roof had fallen in.
The roof had fallen in on part of it, and it looked like, is often the case in some of these houses, it looked like the owner just left.
Yeah, it had all
their
this stuff
was
in
there,
it.
So the bedroom had a bed in it and a mattress and all clothes in it. The kitchen was quite nice in the sense that it had a fireplace that had perhaps been imported from a different house. So, you know, the old, we got a really big hearth, massive fire in a tiny room.
Yep.
Gives you an idea of the weather in the winter.
So I don't know if we actually could have done anything with this building, because it was a bit broken, wasn't it?
It was a bit broken.
Properly broken.
Yeah.
But the good news is that because it's got an actual house on it, it has a habitation license. So that, first of all, that's the very first one we've been to that's had that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So all of the others you would have had to apply for it and hope that you got it, and if you didn't, then you can't live there.
So for those of you looking at properties, when somewhere has a habitation license, what it means is that generally and fairly easily you can either demolish the building and build a building of the same size or footprint, and you don't require planning permission as such to do that, but you would have to submit architect's plans to the camera for their approval, but it's pretty straightforward. Or you could renovate the existing building, make it safe and make it livable, and depending on the condition of it, you may then also require to go to the camera to, you know, change roofing and stuff like that. And what was interesting was clearly on this building, it had been farmed, and the farmer had initially lived in what was a ruin on the other side of the property. So it came with the house from 1970 and a ruin of about 100 years old, which had no roof, but it was very beautiful and in good condition.
So to describe the land to you, once you've pulled up against the track, the house is at the top with some other farm buildings. There was a big barn, there was a little pigsty, there was a dovecot and so on. And then almost straight away, as soon as you were standing outside the house, the land started to slope down. It went all the way down, and then it went back up the other side, and over the other side is where the other ruin was. The wells were right at the bottom of this valley. So there was not a flat bit of land anywhere there at all, was there?
No, there were no terraces. So although it fitted our remit of varied landscape, slightly negative that any growing you would do would have to be on a slope.
Yes, or we'd have to cut terraces
or
and
get diggers in
do
and so
walls
on.
and so on.
But it was a nice piece of land.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And no, not really, nobody living neighbours, you know, no houses or anything like that, not for quite a long way, but lots of other farmland around you. It was very open, although it had trees, there was no sort of shelter.
And it was called Rosemary Land because the farmer who had farmed it had also grown a lot of herbs, so there was a lot of wild rosemary that seeded itself, thyme and other herbs that we didn't recognise, but a lot of herbs growing.
Great
at the
big
top.
wild fennel,
Yeah.
smells amazing when you walk through it. Yeah, this really tempted me, this one, I think.
Yep.
I mean, if it weren't for the issue of parking, so in order to park and create somewhere on our land that we would park, we would have to actually demolish part of a wall that looks like it's easily 100 years old. So that would be quite sad.
Actually, Louis, when I spoke to him about it, and he said, oh, just knock this wall down. He said that the wall was a 300-year-old mud wall.
Oh.
And that it wasn't protected, that you could knock it down.
Knock it down 300
to
years
me,
or something.
I would be depressed by that, and that was the only way that you could get any parking.
Mm-hmm.
The other downside is that we want to have either
what I was
parking
gonna say.
available for van lifers,
Yeah.
friends, but also possibly, you know, getting volunteers in to help with work.
And there just wouldn't have been
there
room. Massive well. We're at Rosemary land. So there's grapes growing here. There's a dom. There's a big stone basin over there where you can put your water that you've pumped. Big fig.
There's 3 ruins on the land. One is a big kind of cow shed. And then there's this old shepherd's hut. And then there's a pigeon coop. All
And-
broken roofs.
And there's another well further up. This is the other ruin. Quite little. So everything we can see. The little ruin over there. Wells down here. All of this. It does definitely need a new roof. This was an animal shed, but with the new roof and a bit of love and care, you could probably fix it up. Number 1, water. It didn't have any rivers or streams, but it did have 2 beautiful wells that I think would have coped with watering the whole land.
Yep.
Number 2, was it arable? Yes, it absolutely was. Fruit was growing. I don't think it'd be any trouble at all to grow vegetables. Number 3, was it over 5,000 metres squared? Yes, it was. It was 11,000. Number 4, access. Was the access okay?
Yeah, the access itself was okay, but the parking was not.
Number 5, 4G signal. There was 4G there, as I recall.
There was 4G, yeah.
Yes. Number 6, varied landscape. Wasn't really varied, was it?
Well, it was more varied than the last one, but it was...
Well, it was
wasn't-
only varied in that it had a
was
slope.
It was
wasn't.
a slope, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have,
Ooh, it had a slope.
didn't have lots of character.
No, exactly. Number 7, fruit rolling. What is? Oh, number 7, fruit and olive trees.
Yeah,
It had lots
Eileen.
of fruit and olive
Yeah, it
trees.
did.
Number 8, a ruin. It had loads of ruins, didn't
It
it?
did, yeah. That was quite encouraging.
That would have been exciting to do up all the different ruins. I really liked the barn. It was
Yeah, it's
huge.
huge, yeah.
Oh no, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Number 9, neighbours. Did it have neighbours?
No, I don't think so.
Not really. And number 10, fire risk. This one had the least fire risk of any property that we've viewed so far, because it was all just arable land, it was all farms, and they've all scraped down to the
It
bare
was just
earth.
olive trees everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so scores out of 10 for the 3 of us. I gave it a 9, only dropping a point because of the access for the van, but I really, really liked it.
Yep.
You gave it a 7. Why'd you give it a 7?
Well, there was nowhere to turn the van, so that's, you know, first problem. I didn't like the fact I'd have to knock that wall down, and then the even if you did all that, we worked out we could at the very most get 3 vans there, including our
Okay.
own.
Alright. And Rosie, she was going to give it a 7, it didn't float her boat very much, but she raised it to an 8.5 because she saw a gecko.
Oh yeah.
There was a gecko
Up to score.
As we walked in one of the buildings and it was sitting there, she's like, ah, comes with a free gecko.
Yep.
So, yeah, there we go. So I think that averages out at about an 8.
And what were you coming back to? You went, oh, I'll tell you in a minute.
The gecko.
Oh, the gecko.
Gecko, 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 gecko. Get me coat. Oh look, there's nothing left on my notepad. That's it. We're all done. We have told you about properties 4, 5, 6 and 7. So, yeah, that's exciting, isn't it?
It is.
7 properties we've seen now, and they were all almost entirely different from each other. Lots of plus points.
Yeah, and it's worth saying from all the lovely comments that we've had that we'd already shortlisted the properties that we looked at. So a lot
Yes.
of the work was going online, looking at lots of photos, maybe speaking to the agents and asking questions. So although we've viewed 7 properties so far, we've probably looked at hundreds of others online,
Oh, yeah.
which we've then discounted either too big, too small,
Not enough
or
water.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
There is a lot of properties that look lovely, but they have no water and no mains access. So straight away, that's off the list, because if you want to grow stuff, you need a lot of water.
Yeah. So yeah, we've seen 7 properties
Yep.
and liked lots of them for different reasons.
So thanks so much. The comments have been absolutely staggeringly lots of them. So thank you for those. And we're trying to get back to everyone. I think I've got back to the majority of people. So thanks very much for leaving your comments. And a lot of new subscribers over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people seem to be interested in the quest for finding land. So welcome to all the new subscribers, and we hope to keep you on our adventures over the coming weeks and months as we carry on looking for land and or buy our land and or see what happens with our visa. So thanks for watching.
The visa saga is still ongoing. We're now at the moment looking for an extension to our 90 days. So if we can't get our last visa appeal through, then we can extend and stay here for 180 days instead of just 90.
And there is some hope on our D7 visa, which we'll tell you about in the next video.
Okay, yeah, we'll tell you about that next time. I think that's enough for today. Hope
Lots
you
of
enjoyed
waffle.
looking around the properties with us. Hope we didn't waffle too much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for watching.
Ciao!